Morning, traders. Chris here, Second Skies Trading. Welcome to the pre-market watch list for today. Hope everybody's having a good trading week. We've had some really good movement in DKNG last week, one of our long-term trades that has worked out really, really well. And we also took position on the 14th last week on Nikola, which we're going to be publishing a video probably about in the next hour for. So that's coming out, so stay tuned on that. Nikola shares, as many of you know, the CEO had resigned, and there's all kinds of issues after the Hindenburg research report coming out. So there's a lot going on with that. There's still some really good trade setups. We also have some movement on Peloton today, Peloton, whatever you want to call it, because Amazon, like they do, like the virus that they are, is, they go into a certain ecosystem, they infect the system, take all the material out of it, and then use it for themselves. And so they are now developing an Amazon bike. So they're going to be contesting Peloton in terms of their market share. So it's going to be very interesting to see. Should be a very, very interesting session. Tech is still struggling right now. It really hasn't gotten up off the mat. So QQQs are kind of in trouble right now. And Tesla also had, a kind of a cold water day on their, announcement with, hey, this battery technology is not going to come out for a few years. It's an interesting change of pace for Elon Musk, because normally Elon is the kind of person who will come out and say, hey, we're going to invent this crazy new technology and we're going to do it in 6 months. It's going to be ready by the rest of the year. And then like 3 years later, it's not done. And so, now he, is just like, hey, this technology is not going to be out for years. And so, it's a change of pace. I think it's a good turn of events for Elon, because, he's been known to be kind of a salesman, like, oh, we're going to have this technology like 19,000 robotaxis by the end of 2019. And here we are almost into 2020 is not even there. They don't even have a full self-driving yet. So it's a very interesting turn of events. It'd be interesting to see if he continues in this direction of not the over-promising and under-delivering in terms of time, but actually being much more measured with that. So we definitely got some movement today going on. And so just to kind of recap in terms of stocks. So ES is barely up. ES futures are up only 2.5 points, which is pretty mild. Europe is up mild after yesterday's bloodbath, especially in banks, because of the whole leak of documents with all the banks showing that they, have been involved in all kinds of money laundering transactions. And so not a good look for them. So yesterday was a bloodbath across the board. Asia was mixed, but slightly down. Europe slightly up. And ES futures just barely up a few points right now. So not exactly gangbusters. It also kind of says why there's not a whole lot of volume later. So what we're going to do for our pre-market watch list is we're going to check in with TradingView stock scanner here, our pre-market gap. And we have a few Gamestop, Sava, and AMCI. These are the ones that are above the volume. So we'll take a look at Gamestop and Sava, and then we're going to look at our Benzinga list. So GME is up a decent amount. This is a stock actually I was pretty active on in 2019. We felt it was going to break major support levels, 15 and 12, and it did all that. Went all the way down to about 3. There have been some activist hedge funds that have got involved in GameStop, and it has kind of built an interesting base here on the weekly. So, built this kind of corrective structure and is now started to launch out with some pretty good gains 2 of the last 3 weeks, and the volume surging on that, so there is some life coming back into the stock. I suspect it'll probably pull back towards, a good base would be towards 7 to 620. There's a potential base at 856. So this kind of resistance and then support for the launch higher. But from pre-market, it's up. What is it up right now? Pre-market, it's up about 10%. So actually a little bit more than that. It's about 25% right now. So from not quite, it's almost there. Looking at the pre-market, it's pretty supportive overall. There's a lot of two-way action though this morning. It was after market, it was really strong, and then pre-market build, and then a little bit of two-way. So short term for day traders, I think there's a little bit of a base right around 987. That's a potential area. Weekly VWAP coming at 925. And of course, you have the 855 as a potential short-term base. I wouldn't have a huge stop on this one here. So if I was going to buy, or if I buy at 856, I probably have a very tight stop on this, maybe 20, 30 cents. Give it a short leash, because if it breaks through this, then there's kind of a little pocket, you know, between here and here. So where the next major base is right around 724. So that's kind of what I'm looking on that. In terms of upside, I can see it getting stuck at 11 and then 1211. So 11 and 1211 would be upside targets. So some potential room on this one here. The volume has to be juicy on this one here. So because GameStop is just, you know, it had a hard time getting off the mat, and only the last few weeks is doing that. So the volume surge is a good sign in terms of the breakout. You want volume surges during breakouts of major corrective structures, so that's positive. But it's not like it's just weak gains. It's weak, pullback, weak. So we might be getting another pullback now. So GME, GameStop is potentially on the list. The other one was Sava Sciences, I believe. Yeah. So they had a good aftermarket, and then they've since kind of faded. Volume is not gangbusters on it or anything like that. In fact, volume across the board, GameStop's decent volume pre-market, but Sava is only 740K. So it's not huge. It's not anything. And we are also right at a major resistance. This little resistance that you can see here on the weekly. Bam, bam. And it's a floor for this corrective structure. So I think the play on this one here is, if you are going to trade to the upside, you're going to want to break out and then let it come back and test this, and let the time and sales show that there's good stuff coming on the bid. Let the volume make sure it's good, and then you could take it for a potential long upside targets. I think you got 14. So, you know, right around 11, you'd want your breakout pullback just above 11. And then you want to shoot for an upside target of about mid 14s, and then potentially 18. So there is some potential in this. This has faded, you know, several times in the past at this level. Bam, 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 bam. So that's why I would rather wait for this to be cleared, and then for it to treat this at a floor, and the price action and the order flow and the volume all show that. So keep an eye on Sava as a potential contender. Okay, getting to Nikola, which we got a video on coming out. So as you can see from the 5-minute chart, this was aftermarket, and then in between aftermarket and pre-market on Monday, the CEO Trevor Milton announced he's resigning. He's facing potential SEC and DOJ investigations. The research report, I read the research report, was quite thick. It was not good. It was not a good research report, and it basically suggested very intimately that Nikola is kind of like an out and outright fraud. And even if only half the allegations are true, it paints a very negative picture. So it just opened up and collapsed. Was down at one point, down to 2160 from 34. That is huge. You know, you're talking what, $13 roughly on a $34 stock. So almost down 33% to the peak. It did bounce, went right to a prior support level that we had kind of measured out, and then has since rejected, and there's no, you know, it hit that, and then there's just no follow-up buying. Even though the volume was well above its daily average, there was just no follow-up buying. So this is the hurdle that bulls are going to have to clear, break above and hold above. But I'm bearish on it. I still have an option play on it, which we'll talk about. The video will go live today, probably in about an hour from now. So stay tuned to that, because not only does it describe all the things that happened, how we traded it, how we profited, how we shared the trade setup with our members ahead of time, but also how potential plays going forward. So you'll want to definitely check out that video. So keep an eye on Nikola, a lot of action on that. Blnk is a hot one. This one is, what's it looking at pre-market? So pre-market volume is 2 million, which is good. Average is 8.8. So before the market's even opened, we're at about 1/4, about 22% of our normal volume. So that shows pre-market institutional interest. Good volume, really good structure. It was basically on the announcement that they had started distributing charging stations. So Blnk is creating EV charging stations across the US, and they started to distribute some, and it was a huge increase in terms of the amount that they distributed in July and August. on year-over-year growth. So very, very strong. It keeps holding VWAP, 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 VWAP. So I'm expecting this to look pretty good. Pre-market is 970. I think you're going to find some resistance around 1271. If it can get past 997, get past 10, then I think this has scope for a move up to low to mid 12s. In terms of pullback areas of support, I like this one here. The reason why I like it is because you got this resistance here, you got this resistance here, you got this resistance here, and then the breakout. So there's a pretty decent base around 857. So I'm going to set some alarms. If we get a pullback there, I'll take it. Otherwise, like to see this break at 10 and everything look good on the volume, time and sales, everything like that before we get long in this one here. So before we move on, we got a couple questions here. We got Chester Adlin. Do you predict the whole market will recover or continue to go down today? I think it's going to struggle. I think so. If you have been following along with the news, not just, I don't mean like the Main Street news, but financial media, most of this giant rally in tech. So tech was the leader in terms of all the indices. So, you know, Nasdaq overshot. This was prior all-time highs. This is the COVID sell-off. And tech overshot everything. It crushed it. So, you know, SPX barely passed the all-time highs and then has since sold off. Dow Jones didn't even make it to the all-time highs and then sold off. Mid caps didn't even make it to the highs, and you know, it's sold off since then. Same thing with Russell. So why was Nasdaq so far and above everything else? So the reason is that it started to come out in mid-August that there was a Nasdaq whale out there, that there was an incredibly large player that was using options to create this massive move in the Nasdaq. And it turns out it was SoftBank, and they had used a former trader from Deutsche Bank who had a pretty impressive track record, who was a PhD in electrical engineering. So he's a super quant math guy. And when the liquidity was super low, they started using options and the reflexivity of options to help launch the market. So they started coming in with large call plays and call spreads. And if you know how the options markets work, it's a reflexivity market. So if you're a market maker, you're a broker, you don't want to position, you don't want to be long or short the market, because you have a business model that will help you make money from the spread. It's completely risk neutral. If you can, you know, be long and short equally, you're going to collect the spread transaction, you're going to make a ton of money, you have no directional risk. So you have a business, you have this free business model that allows you to make a ton of money and just keep collecting spreads off of trading volumes, basically, with taking no directional risk. Well, with options, the way the market works, and if you understand how the rules are with the OCC, the Options Clearing Exchange. So the way it works is that if a broker who's offsetting positions from, say, a large hedge fund has acquired a certain amount of calls on a particular stock or index or something like that, they have to start getting long the shares. If they're selling tons and tons of calls to a particular hedge fund, well, they want to be delta neutral. They want to neutralize that risk. So to offset their upside exposure, their upside risk, they start buying shares in the market. So once the call volume gets to a certain point, they will start buying shares in the market. And that forces the dealers then to be following the hedge fund and pushing the market higher. And so they just kept doing this. And then the hedge funds realized, oh, wow, we've missed a lot of this rally in May. And they even came out and said, hey, we're going to start buying the dips. So then they helped fuel the rally to go even further. And so, you know, this reflexivity type cycle just fed into itself. And that's why the NASDAQ overshot everything, because that's where the majority of the option plays were. In mid to late August, they start to unwind that position. And as soon as they started to unwind that position, look what happened. Boom, sold off. It was the fastest 10% correction from the fastest recovery in history. So that has never happened before. We've never had the fastest recovery in history lead to the fastest 10% correction in the market. And so once the position started to unwind, tech started to unwind as a whole. So that's why you've seen names like, OSTK, which was part of this, massive sell-off from the highs. You've seen a lot of different tech stocks just not hold their highs. And that's because the wind underneath the market was pulled out. So you have that. And I think what we're now going through is a little bit of a hangover from the fact that there's nobody underneath the market underpinning the market anymore, that there's nobody doing that. And so I am not favorable on tech right now. I think there's going to be some dip buyers that are coming in. And so, yeah, but I'm not favorable on tech right now. I think QQQ is going to have to clear 281, 282 to unwind some of this bearish pressure. And now that they're off the sauce, so to say. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that. Justin Goodman saying, good morning, Chris and Sasha. Good morning to you. Frank Costa. Hi, Chris. Your price action training has changed my life. That's awesome to hear. Thanks a lot for sharing. You have no idea how many lives you have improved. That's true. I don't know how many, but hopefully a lot. So thank you. I'm glad to hear, Frank. That's awesome to hear. Thank you. Well, the Dow, S&P recovered today. I'm assuming, Chester, you're asking this because you're bullish and you have some long positions on them that are maybe underwater. Is that possibly why you're asking? If it is, no big deal. In terms of SPY, I am not exactly too excited about the S&P 500. It's going to need to not only get back into this corrective structure. So you have an impulsive move, and then you have a corrective structure, and then you have an impulsive leg out of it. We are getting a counter trend impulsive move. So there might be some short-term exhaustion from this sell-off. I mean, it's a pretty big sell-off, 360 to 320. That's over 10%. So you're talking, yeah, it's over 10%. So it's a pretty big sell-off. There is, I think there's a little bit of profit taking from those who are short and then some dip buyers that are coming in. But first it's going to need to clear 330. And I think it really needs to take out 342.70, 343 before you can say, hey, this sell-off is unwound. So it's going to need to do that because there's clearly some sellers who came in here with force, with size, rejected this a second time and has said, no, this is going lower. So if you're short from here, they're going to defend this. So it's got a little work cut out for it. It's got to clear 331. It's going to have to clear, this corrective structure to say, hey, we have a base in place. So that's my thought on that. Justin Good is saying, if you get a chance, can you run through your CAD and possibly one more? I'm looking to go long in your CAD breakout structure, but not sure how to play it. Justin, you got to pick a time frame to do that. So you gave me the instrument, you gave me your analysis. You got to also give me a time frame to analyze it. So instrument, analysis, and time frame. How much time do we have? 6:24. Okay, we got 5 minutes, so we can do this. I'm waiting for your time frame. In the meantime, I'm going to answer a couple questions. Human's saying, if the impulsive comes after a corrective move and has smaller length or bigger, does it tell us something different about the scenarios? Not necessarily. You can't necessarily look at the length in and of itself on the second impulsive move as evidence of a transition. You need to let that second impulsive move play itself out and, then see how it responds to the prior structures. Gary Coe saying, Chris, is your options bootcamp useful for people like me with low capital? How do you define low capital? It's generally relative. So if you can give me an idea, generally you want to have at least $1,000 to $2,000 before it's in your account, before you start doing some options. That can get you started with options, basically, and allow you to do some options, especially some of the first, 4 strategies in the options bootcamp. So it's definitely a possibility. Justin again saying, looking to go along your CAD at 56.84. 56.84 on the 1 hour. Okay, so let's take a look at the 1 hour. 56.84. So you're looking for this structure to break. It's not my favorite because the reason being is if you look at all of these rallies in your CAD, they all get sold off. Rally, sold off, rally, sold off. It's not really showing that. It's not showing since, here, some early September, that any sort of breakout sustaining, and it's not building. It is building, it's got higher low, higher low, higher, 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 high. But I would want to see a lot more squeeze before I would consider a breakout. Because right now it's showing that every rally is getting rejected, 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 rejected. So it doesn't seem like it's got a pure breakout structure at the moment, the way we trade breakouts. But it is building a base. It seems like for now, these would be your levels. This isn't a bad level to be long, in my opinion. 55.78 isn't a bad pullback level to be long, in my opinion. I think you might have to, consider a potential short here or wait for a breakout pullback, because it's just not showing a pure breakout momentum type structure. So yeah, if it starts to change that, then I would reconsider. But that's my thoughts on that. Okay. Yeah, not my favorite as well. Yeah, it's not the cleanest. There can be cleaner ones for sure out there, for sure. Okay, so we got 3 more minutes. We've covered Blnk, which has rejected a little bit, so watch for your pullback point on that. We've covered GME. We've covered Sava. Gonna need to see a little bit more on that. We've covered Nikola. Watch for more on that in our video that comes out. DKNG, we took some profit. So as you all know, we've been long DKNG since 26. We've been consistently adding. We added on this pullback at 40.87. We even told the members, hey, long 40.87. We bought on this pullback, it double pullback. And then as it was at that level, DraftKings announced they had signed a partnership deal with ESPN. For them and Caesar Sportsbooks are going to be providing their online fantasy sports betting tech, basically. So there's just a huge boost to it. It had already had a huge boost the week before. From this week was the week, if you notice, it was just choppy for a while. And then the announcement that Michael Jordan had joined the board and taken an equity stake in DraftKings, obviously very, very positive. Not just an iconic name, but obviously a large investor. I mean, he's worth, I think, $2 billion right now. So he probably took a pretty good sized position in the company. And then, is kind of pulling back a little bit. And then, hey, the ESPN deal, and it launched. And so we took profit we had bought at 48.87. We had already had positions that were long in it. Like our prior average long price was 36. And then, we added at 40.87. It went all the way up. We added. We added on the breakout. So right now, I think our average price is 43, but we took profit from 40.87 at around mid 51s yesterday. So made about $11 on that portion of the sale. And we still got a fair portion that our average price, I think, is 43 now, a little bit mid 43. So up about $9 on our current position. So it's stabilizing from the pullback, and then it's holding above VWAP, the weekly VWAP, for a while. So if it continues to do it, that's a really good sign structurally. So I'm going to put an alert there. It might add some more. But yeah, it's going to need to hold VWAP to retest these highs. And if it does, then you got a nice target in mind near term. So DKNG on that one there. Okay. Market's about to open, so I'm going to wrap it up. And there we go. So good luck trading today. Stock trading course members, I'll be in there shortly sharing live trades. So I will see you then. But I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you get something out of it. You learn something from the process. You learn how we analyze stock setups. We also went over our currency pair, show how we analyze the different price action structures, potential trade ideas. We look at the context, watch moves, all that. So if you'd like to learn more, check us out, secondskiesforex.com. Other than that, if you appreciated this morning session, go ahead and hit that like button. We really appreciate it. It lets YouTube know that you find this valuable, and they support us and allows us to keep doing content like this for free. So make sure you hit that like button. We really appreciate that. Other than that, have a good trading week. Stay tuned for a video coming out on the channel today, probably within the next hour. And then that will be on Nikola. That's our kind of a 10-minute video on Nikola there. And then we will have top trade on Friday. And then we'll have another video on Sunday, which will probably not be a stock analysis video. We might do actual trading lessons. So stay tuned for that. Okay, so good luck trading today. Have a good trading week, and I will see you guys next time. Take care, everyone.